So, first things first, guys. How are you?
We're good, thank you.
Very good, thanks.
Yeah, enjoying Amsterdam.
Okay, well, good to have you. Before we get into the new record, I'd like to jump back a little bit. Because, well, you've been away for a while as Slowdive, so
Yeah.
how do you look back at the first 3 albums after this period of time and having made the new record?
How do you look back on them? Well, I don't know. How do you look back on them? Yeah, the first 3 albums. I think it's hard to, I think you think of each one differently. I think generally, I think pretty, you look back on them fondly. And I think I suppose it's interesting that there's still records that seem to resonate, with another generation at this point as well, when we're doing shows and stuff, and people still want to talk about those records, which is really cool.
And at the time, the kind of experience, and then we'll quickly go through all 3 of them. The experience, what was the mindset of the band? And then we'll start with Just for a Day. What was the mindset when that came out?
That was that was kind of a weird record because we'd done 3 EPs very quickly when we signed to Creation, and we sort of got to the point where they were like, right, time to go and do the record. And we're like, well, we just did 3 EPs. They're like, no, still gonna do the album. And so we sort of went into the studio with no songs, and sort of 6 weeks later came out with a finished album. And we made a weird decision, didn't we, where we weren't going to put any of the singles or any of the EP tracks on that record.
Right.
Yeah.
So we kind of made work for ourselves. And in some ways, like for me, the first true Mojave album is the compilation of the 3 EPs, which was Blue Day.
Mojave.
Not Mojave.
The
first Slowdive album, the first true Slowdive album was Blue Day, which was the compilation of the three EPs, and I think that really captures the band at a certain point then. Mm-hmm. And I guess I was always slightly disappointed with Just for a Day personally, because I feel like, we kind of scraped it together, but it was never really the strongest set of songs, like in my view, and I think we were still kind of figuring out how to use the studio, and it's kind of like, to my ears, sort of kind of overproduced. Mm. But I don't know how you feel about that. But.
It was, what Neil said about Creation, saying, right, you need to do a record, you need to do one now, like do an album. And
right.
Somebody, I can't remember who it was, somebody said, don't put the singles on it.
Well, it was me.
Was it you?
Well, I think we all decided as a band that we didn't want to do that, that we didn't just want it to be, and it was a sort of a weird decision because it's kind of what you do, but so we wanted something completely new for that record, rather than sort of a hodgepodge of stuff from the EPs.
Yeah. In hindsight, it would have been nice to put 1 or 2 singles on it and maybe taken 1 or 2 off.
In hindsight, perhaps, but Blue Day kind of does that. I think that brings all that stuff together really nicely as an album, and I think that's kind of. So for me, I do look at that as a sort of. That's really the first album, as it were, really, yeah.
Was it stressful then, that time?
No.
No, it's fun.
Okay.
Yeah, we were just hanging out making music, and we didn't really know once we put it out that people were going to say, oh, it's not that great at the time, which is what they said.
Yeah,
we had fun.
At the time we thought it was great. We thought we'd done our best work ever. But yeah, I sort of, when I look back at the records, like to me, that's definitely the weakest of the stuff. Of the records we did put out.
And then how do you start on the next record? And after kind of the critics and the audience went over the first album, what was the mindset then going into the second one? Was it a positive one?
I think it was always positive when we were recording. It took, Souvlaki took a long time, didn't it? And we were sort of doing shows and we'd record and do more and we did a bunch of recording, and I remember McGee was kind of wasn't we basically scrapped a load of stuff because I think creation were a bit like, it's not really as good as it can be. And so we kind of, the record took a while really, but I think once Ed Buller kind of got his hands on it and kind of mixed it, and we were really happy with that one. And I think, we was, I suppose we didn't really worry too much about the press reaction. I mean, it was still, I think we weren't always getting great reviews, but we just kind of, there was an audience, we were still playing live and stuff, and still really enjoying it as a band, yeah.
Because was that in the back of your mind, kind of while making music? Did you think about how people might react?
Not particularly in the studio. Once you've made the record, you'd probably sit down and start thinking, oh God, the record's coming out. I wonder what kind of reviews it'll get. I wonder if people will like it. But I think when you're making the record, you're just kind of, we always made the records for ourselves. It was kind of, it was just, and I think it was always a really quite an enjoyable process. I think for me, some of the happiest moments for Slowdive were at Courtyard Studios with the band making the records, and with Chris Hufford, who was our sort of engineer and sort of our kind of just part of the gang. When we were making those records, it was very much in the moment. You just sort of enjoyed that process and didn't really worry. You didn't think, oh God, how I don't think you can ever make. I don't know how other people make records, but you kind of have to just do them and make records that you think the records you enjoy without really kind of referencing what anyone else is going to think of it too much.
Yeah, we never had a record label popping down every other day saying, right, have you written a single yet? Have you written something we can play on the radio? We were kind of always left to do what we wanted, which was a really good thing about being signed to Creation. There wasn't that sort of external pressure. So yeah, as Neil said, it was most of it was really good fun actually. It was us setting up in the studio and playing and recording and experimenting, and yeah.
Is there one memory that sticks out from that time?
For me, it's mixing Souvlaki, the track, on the desk, which was Neil, myself, and Chris Hufford. And we had these crazy delays going through. There was a drum machine just kind of like having a sort of keeping a backbone, and it was really much tougher than we ever
you had
thought.
to, because obviously everything was analog now. It's still all running off tape. We weren't using computers at that point. So every time you did a mix, you'd do it live. So you'd have someone at one end of the desk doing like maybe the guitars and the delays on the guitars, and then Simon would be manning the drums and doing the delays on the drums. So you'd record these live mixes, particularly with Souvlaki, which was the track Souvlaki, which has a lot of kind of dubbing effects going on. But I remember that. That was a fun one.
That was fun, but really frustrating. We thought it would take 5 minutes. It took about 5 hours.
Right.
Yeah.
And so then that record is released, and the press kind of gets into it a little bit. It's things about genres and kind of shoegazing was a little bit unpopular, or became a little bit unpopular. And those kind of things. How did you view the media? Because the media is always kind of a tricky thing, I suppose, when you're a musician.
I mean, you sort of, I suppose at that point in time it was like, I suppose the important magazines for us were like Enemy and Melody Maker and stuff like that, and so you'd always kind of be very aware of whether they liked or disliked your record, Sort of above and beyond those two, I don't think we really were that aware or even that bothered, but because you can't keep a track of, people reviewing your records in America and all that, or wherever it is, in Holland or France. But our immediate kind of reference points were Enemy and Melody Maker, so if they didn't like something, it would kind of be a kick in the teeth. You'd just be like, oh shit, But it kind of seems ridiculous thinking about it now, because I think things are so different at this point, and people kind of reference their music from so many different sources, and they read about music from so many different blogs and websites, I guess in the late 80s and very early 90s, it was a very small, in England at least, it seemed a very small inch of the world, you know.
Right.
Yeah.
So in that sense, and then going on to kind of the album you made now, were you surprised by kind of the popularity of the band growing, or at least staying as it was over the years while you weren't active?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've been, you know, since we've had the reunion, I don't think any of us were really kind of very aware that, in fact I know that we weren't, but aware that there was this kind of resurgence or interest in what we've done, and and sort of, you know, some of the other bands from that era as well, and so it was a really nice kind of thing for us, yeah.
And going into the third record, then, because you mentioned already the kind of the musical development from the first to the second. So when the third and Simon, that's kind of when you didn't feel like you were going in the right direction.
Yeah, I know Neil wanted to make something that was sort of more kind of loop based, and I saw him take a drum machine out of a bag, and I just kind of felt like I just want to. At that time, very naively, I just want to play drums. You know, I was a kid, and I wanted to do drumming, and so I went and did drumming with a few other people, and wasn't around for Pygmalion. It's as simple as that. It wasn't like I stormed out of the room, never to return, which is really ironic, because I love a lot of the influences Neil had, like Talk, and like the New York minimalists like Philip Glass and Steve Reich, avant-garde and experimental forms of music. It's what I'm really interested in, and I kind of went off in that area actually. So and some of my favourite Slowdive songs are on Pygmalion. Rooty is one of my favourite Slowdive songs, so I kind of wish I was around in the studio to say, you know.
But maybe you enjoyed that record more because you weren't involved with
maybe. Yeah.
One thing is very interesting then, because you all then go kind of your separate ways, and you have bands and everything. Did you miss being in Slowdive?
Yeah, I mean, I always missed that sort of being part of the gang and part of, you know, but I think we were all, you know, we were still, you know, 23, 24 when the band broke up, so I think we were all super keen at that point to pursue other things. You know, we'd been in this band for 6 years, kind of lived in each other's pockets. It had been a kind of non-stop, you know, making records, touring, so I think we were, very happy to kind of explore other things and, you know, do other things, and yeah. But yeah, I think you know, speaking for myself, I definitely sort of miss those friendships a little bit, you know, because you get so close when you're sort of in the kind of, yeah, you know, we'd sort of grown up together, you know. Really,
yeah,
so.
and you become a really close gang as well, even though, you know, it was very intense, and you know, yeah, you do, and as you get older, you kind of think, oh, wasn't that amazing? And we went to America together, and we released these records together, and we kind of clicked as a band. And you know, I think we've all gone off and done other musical projects where you're playing in a room full of other really talented musicians, but there's something missing for some reason. Whereas with Slowdive, when the five of us actually got in a room and started playing together, some kind of energy was there that I personally have really missed over the years. So, you know, to reform and kind of get back into the swing of things almost instantaneously has been really...
It's been good, hasn't it? It's been fun.
Yeah.
What has been the catalyst then that got you together? Was it a phone call or?
There's a few different things that really kind of that sort of coalesced at the same time. I think I was doing, like, I did a solo show where I asked Rachel to come and sing a couple of songs, and we were singing some Slowdive songs, and you know, my friend Nathaniel Cramp, who was promoting that show, and he runs like Sonic Cathedral Records, and is kind of, you know, he's one of the guys who'd been keeping the shoegaze flame aglow for a really long time. He knew that you know, the rest of the band were coming to that show, and he'd asked me to invite everyone to come and do the Slowdive songs, and And I'd sort of said, well, you know, we wouldn't do them acoustically, Nat, you know, and he was like, well, do them electrically then. And I was like, oh. But, you know, so it was like stuff like that. So you'd end up, we'd talk about it, and then I think, you know, everyone sort of was surprisingly kind of into the idea of actually doing, and I don't think any of us thought that each other would be, you know, so.
Why not?
I suppose, I don't know, I suppose, like, I mean, for me personally, it hadn't really crossed my mind for years and years. I'd never even thought about it, you know, and I'd been asked in interviews, you know, even in 2012, I think I was asked and had been like, well, no, it would probably never happen. Because it just wasn't something I personally really, and not sort of hankered after, you know, it wasn't, you know, it was just, but this sort of happened quite naturally, and we kind of got off to play at Primavera, and it just sort of seemed to make sense. And, you know, for us it was really important. I suppose we talked about doing a new record you know, that was the first thing we talked about, rather than doing shows, so that was a really important part of it.